Welcome back, everyone. This week we watched Don't Worry, Darling, the new Olivia Wilde film with a lot of big names. Harry Styles, Chris Pine, I wanted to say Chris Pratt, Chris Pine, and last but most importantly, Florence Pugh.
I was about to say last time we talked about it, you said they don't matter.
Don't Worry, Darling, which stars Florence Pugh, and I don't care who else is in the movie.
I think Chris Pine is in it.
Doesn't matter.
They don't, I had to say the best for last. A new psychological horror suspense movie with the setting in would you call that 40s? No, not 40s. I'd say closer to 60s
50s, 60s, something like that. Yeah.
because they had the TV. 50s, 60s. Okay. Set in that time. I thought it was pretty good. Not great. It emulated a lot of things I've seen before. There's a big plot in there that I didn't see coming, and one that I did see coming. Two that I saw coming. One of them I didn't suspect, but it was cool when it happened. A good six or seven. It's between a six and a seven. It's good. Again, it's nothing that hasn't been done before. It just did what it did decently well. So it's a plot, writing, story. It's kind of average, but the music, cinematography, acting was pretty good. Harry Styles surprised me. He's a little bit more talented than just a pop musician. Yeah, it was all right. I enjoyed it, but I've seen better.
I did not think that. Yeah, I did not like this film. I forgot how exactly I said it to Zach, but I said it along the lines of, to me, it felt like a feminism propaganda film in a bland sort of storytelling kind of aspect way. There were some good things I did like about it. I thought Florence Pugh and Chris Pine were good. I thought they did wonderful performances. However,
Mm-hmm.
most of the other stuff I just thought wasn't that great. The cinematography I thought was good. I thought the music was all right. It wasn't like anything to write home about, but it wasn't like horrible and took you out of the movie. I'd say the same thing with the cinematography. So it's just the rest of the stuff. I just didn't think it was that good. It felt more like propaganda. And then after hearing all the stuff I've heard about the film, it's just from behind the scenes stuff, and it has nothing to do with the film in and of itself. It's just
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes stuff. Didn't really help with my perception of the film anyway. I didn't. I left that at the entrance of the theater when I got in, but it kind of bled into it. It still bleeds into this film, and it does that a lot, especially in the roughly the end of the third act. I would say does that a lot, where a lot of characters just change or their mood kind of changes without like a good development of. It felt like it was rushed. It wasn't really developed well. Yeah, it was just I didn't think it was that good. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10. It just wasn't that good. Probably never going to watch the film again. I do have a question. Is Harry Styles, does he have an English accent?
Yes.
Okay. It felt like they gave him as little lines as in dialogue as possible with an American accent because he only seems to be able to do English accent. Now, I could
I
be
mean,
wrong, but that seems what it was like, because it whenever he did American, it wasn't always the greatest. And most of the time he doesn't have a lot of like long one liners. He just has a one word most of the time when he's in the American sort of stance.
mhm.
Yeah, 3 out of 10. Basically liked Florence Pugh and Chris Pine. The rest of it kind of just fell flat.
I don't really understand the feminist propaganda standpoint. I didn't have. I still don't see where that comes from, even after it's been mentioned.
Okay. They decided to make all the guys bad guys, and like they did it quickly without ever like giving you like, well, maybe this isn't always the case. They just said, oh yeah, this is all the case.
They
They made
showed it
all the
wasn't always the case. Her best
no,
friend.
yeah, they showed it with one and then said the rest of them were like her. They basically said that is always the case. And she was just fortunate enough and she was the only one that was able to know or able to figure out and just didn't say anything. I would have thought that would have been more so like that wouldn't be, it'd be more so a 50-50 shot or maybe a 75-25, not like a 1,000 to 1, like kind of deal.
I see that as such a minor detail that I can't consider that propaganda.
I consider it so blatantly just out there that it makes no sense as to why couldn't it ever be the other way? Why does it only have to be one way? Like, what if the guy was just thrown into this and then had to figure out, oh crap, I gotta do all this stuff. And then he's just sucked into this all by himself and he's just like figuring it all out. You see what I'm getting at? Like it doesn't quite make like
Not
for it to
really.
only go one. Okay, well, I guess this is
I
just
just don't
something we're
see
gonna
it.
just they make all the men bad guys and make none of the men good guys. And they make all the women victims. And they do it quickly. They do one, and they actually technically do two of them with what's her name? Florence Pugh's character, and then the other lady, Margaret, I think is her name.
Yeah.
They do it with those two and kind of just make it a they kind of just make them like see that show them kind of like being like somewhat victims and not quite knowing what's going on and kind of being forced into this.
Hmm.
However, they don't say that with they kind of make it so that way like everybody else is mostly in on it until like about the third act when they just flippantly just hurry this up, we got to hurry up and finish the movie kind of deal.
As a devil's advocate argument, the way that this project was found in universe is through some conspiracy, far leaning like radio show podcast in the real world. I don't know any woman that listens to podcasts. I know a lot of men that listen to podcasts, and I know the demographic of podcasts like Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and those that have that kind of energy are majority male as a devil's advocate argument for where it fits in universe.
I just don't see like if this was such a like such a big thing and a big
Mm-hmm.
like how big it was.
I
I
don't
just
think it was
don't
big.
with how like big like life changing it was. If that
See,
makes no
okay,
sense.
not
I
not
wasn't trying
not
to say
not
like it's like
numerical
because it's
size.
not no because numerically it's very very like small. I'd say
It
it's
is
probably not much more than it probably has it has less people than like I would say probably has less people than a city, but it's still growing to that point
less
where
than
it's
100.
getting there.
They
Yeah.
gave the number
Oh, they did. Okay. Well.
when he was returning from work. I'm trying to be
Uh-huh.
as spoiler free as ambiguous as possible. They said 72,
Okay.
which I remember that because I was like flabbergasted. It's niche, very small.
Well, one of the things that I would think would have happened at some point is that some of the men would have told their wives. I don't see why none of the men would have told their wives. And that was kind of like one thing that threw me off because it was just like all these people have wives because there's no way like you said
Mm-hmm.
like you kind of said and you kind of hinted towards this. Most of these all the people that were shown have families. So all the women seem to be real for the most part.
Yeah, I
So
mean, from a realistic standpoint, half of 72 people being put in this situation would raise alarms,
yeah, and they would
um,
have told their significant other of something about this. Like they wouldn't
stuff
have
like
just,
that.
not everybody would have been, I forget what Harry Styles' character's name is, but not all of them would have done it the way that he did.
Yeah,
However, some of them might have, but not all of them would have, if that makes
yeah.
sense. And that just kind of threw me out of the loop. Just like not all men are that trash. So
Mm-hmm.
why make, if you're going to go after like if you're going to make kind of a group sample sizing of
Mm-hmm.
men for this thing, why make them all
I
evil
mean,
if that
again,
makes
we
sense?
only really get the details of Alice,
I
and
know, but they
we
also I get that. But however, they do say like in the during that whole thing where she also like figures out like that her friend Bunny also knows
Mhm.
about their whole situation. She says nobody else knows. Everybody else is a victim like you.
She does, yeah.
And also that brings up one other thing that I didn't quite get. Bunny seems to rat out about what's her fit. She seems to rat
Margaret.
out about Alice and Margaret to Chris Pine's character. However,
I didn't get that.
it seems like she did to some degree. Hence why that's why I think Margaret was actually there at that party.
Oh, I didn't get that
I think that's
feeling.
why Margaret was at that party because that's the same kind of thing they did with Alice later on.
Hmm.
I think that might be the reason as to why that party happened because Margaret
Hmm.
was there, and they even bring it up that not everybody was there for that party. It just seemed
Hmm.
to be sprinkled throughout and just picked at random. So I'm thinking maybe it wasn't that random if they were going to actually like give him that sort of like
Yeah.
overseeing mentality, even though he died kind of dumb in the end. If you're going to give him that kind of like super like mentality, like he knows like what like where the checker pieces are or where the chess pieces are on the board,
Hmm.
then I would see if you're gonna that made sense. I'm trying to remember where I was going with that.
For the sake of
Fake.
being able to talk a little bit more freely, I'll say now it's spoiler. The best way I could describe this is a suspense horror version of a child between The Matrix and The Truman Show.
I wasn't ever terrified, if that makes sense.
I
I never
mean,
thought
not
of it
all
as a
horror. Like
horror.
again, it's a suspense. I consider suspense under horror.
Yeah, I would definitely say there were some suspenseful moments. I never thought of it as a horror, but
Hmm.
if it's going to be categorized that way, I guess you can.
Yeah, I guess it's like The Truman Show, but made as a suspense movie. Yeah, there were no jump scares. There was nothing
Yeah.
actually scary. It's just the situation of not knowing what's going on with your life.
And back
Um,
to Bunny, I do think that she did bring up that she is the reason that Margaret and Alice were kind of known to Chris Pine's character. However, she never lashes out at Bunny for her knowing,
mhm,
unlike she did with her husband, I guess. And they're kind of the people that made her feel insane or like she was
yeah,
crazy.
mhm.
However, she treats one completely different from the other.
Have you seen The Truman Show?
No, but it's I've heard it before, and I've heard of it before. I probably need to go see it, but just
It's
haven't
one
yet.
of Jim Carrey's biggest movies. It's not a comedy. It's not a spoiler to tell you what it's about because they introduce it to you in the very beginning. There's this big dome,
Hmm.
massive metal dome that they
Oh,
made
so it's
to
like
size
Epcot.
a city. Yes. And inside it is a real city filled with people and shops.
Hmm.
And basically, what they did is this TV show took a baby, this TV company, they took a baby and they filmed his life since the day he was born. And that's called The Truman Show. And basically, the movie follows Truman as he starts to realize his life is not what he thinks it is.
It's all
So
fake, essentially.
yeah, it's not like a reality show where it follows him and he's a celebrity. It's all hidden cameras. It's as real as it possibly can get. So he's just living his life and none the wiser until some like one small mistake makes him start looking at things differently. And it has a similar thing, which you didn't like about this movie, where people's characters changed very quickly.
Well, this one it changed rapidly and it gave no reasoning for it, whereas
I see
I'm
the
pretty sure with
reasoning as everyone is being fake.
all the women are being fake.
Not them.
No,
Bunny was.
no, the men I get. The
Yeah,
men
yeah, okay, okay, okay.
all the men I get because like they're like you've already said they're all these bad guys, essentially. So they see that happening, they're gonna like, okay, we gotta keep this sacred. We need to take
Hmm.
her out. I get that.
Hmm.
I get the men all going bad. It's just the women all of a sudden just turning on their husbands without no real
That
say.
scene
That's
was
the that's
interesting. I
that's the
wanted to
one I
see.
didn't quite get because it was just like put at random, and it all of a sudden happens, and like you don't get to see any of the other women trying to go figure it out. If they had put some scenes in there with them actually looking into some of this stuff, I would have been able to forgive it. But it just all of a sudden just flippantly just goes on the spin of
Yeah,
a dime just immediately,
that was a
and
very
especially with Chris
interesting
Pine's
choice.
wife, especially with Chris Pine's
I
wife,
saw that
that came
coming.
out of the. I
That's the
saw
one that didn't take me by surprise.
I don't think that if in all honesty, that doesn't take me by surprise either. It's lazy writing, in my opinion, because it just comes out of nowhere. And earlier, it's
With
not established that she knows anything about it. So it's just
that, the her last action, yeah, they didn't have any leading up to that, but I assumed she knew just by how high she was putting her husband on the pedestal. Just the way she acted made me think that oh, she's in on it after it all came out because it
okay.
was it was not like
I
a
thought she was in
we're
on it,
protect.
but I thought she was in on it, but on his side. I didn't think she was in on it, but against him.
Oh, I mean that one, yeah, they didn't have much backing for what
That one I
side
did
she
not.
was on.
That one I did not know. However, they seemed to imply that she was on his side throughout the whole film.
Yes.
That's the one where I was just like, okay, that came out of nowhere. If that makes more sense as to where I'm
Oh yeah.
thinking this,
No, yeah, I get it.
because
It didn't catch me by surprise. It just didn't have any backing, uh,
yeah,
build up,
that's what I'm
foundation, no
that's what I'm
foundations.
mainly saying. Most of the stuff, like if it would have been, and that's why I say the last part was rushed, because they could have had some scenes where like it could have all made sense. You could have shown some of the stuff
Mhm.
happening, and
If you want
most
to
of the
take,
stuff kind of does go slow at the beginning anyway. So you could have
yeah, if you
made
want to
some of the
take that
stuff.
angle, they spent the majority of their time on the build up, and then I guess they had to close it out faster than they wanted, or
Mhm,
faster than they should have. I think the buildup was great. I thought the atmosphere, the mystery they were weaving, the whole "you made me think I was crazy."
mhm.
Um, I thought that was well paced. And then yeah, the conclusion could have had a little bit more.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is if you're gonna try to do that kind of ending, which it seems like they were gonna do that kind of ending anyway,
Hmm.
you need to kind of space it out accordingly and not just have a great beginning and then rush it at the end like you gotta hurry this up. And
Hmm.
one of the things that also never gets quite explained is the plane, which is the whole thing, which is the whole catalyst for everything going down. That just seems like lazy writing.
I don't know. I don't know what it was because it wasn't like they were in a dome. They were nowhere.
Yeah, like
So
they were in a virtual reality kind of thing. So I don't know what it was. I don't know why it was, and they never explain it. It's just there. It happens. It's the reason for the whole movie kind of going on the way it does,
mhm.
but it's never explained. And that's one of the things where I was like, you need to explain that. Like
I still
something
think it's
needs to be explained of about that.
I still think it's a good story in universe and concept itself. I think is really good. I
I think
wasn't
the concept
expecting it
is,
to be
yeah,
similar, like Matrix or false reality sort of thing. I can forgive its faults for what the entirety of it is a little more because I did enjoy my movie watching experience.
okay. I can. What I'll say is, I think the concept of what they were trying to do,
Hmm.
like as far as like kind of what like it seems to be somewhat a kind of exact copy of the Truman Show, just in like a Matrix format, like you said.
Yeah,
And
I heard
I think
someone else say
that's
that it was a knockoff version of the Matrix of the Truman Show.
yeah,
And I
and that seems to be an interesting concept anyway, regardless. However, I think it was just poor execution and the poor writing that was the problem in this thing, along with a whole bunch of the acting not being the greatest on some characters, whereas other characters did phenomenal with what they were given. So it's just hodgepodge of screw up in this, if that makes sense. And that kind of
okay.
took me out of the movie.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, that's why I did give it a 6. It's something I haven't seen before. I just thought it
Mhm.
was better than bad.
I thought it was bad. Yeah, I gave it a 3 because the concept may be great, but it's the execution of the thing
Hmm.
that is the film. It's not the concept, because if it was based on concept, a lot of movies would be 10s. It's just
Gotcha. Yeah.
it's just the execution and the way it was performed that was what kind of dove it down. Thank you for watching this episode of Galactic Reviews. Join us next time. We'll be watching The Great Mouse Detective, and hopefully Zach will be with us at some point. We do miss him. Not
Yeah.
really. See you
Oh.
next time on Galactic Reviews.